had my hand on the wreck's hull when I heard him breathing. Not the hiss of cooling metal, not wind through the canyon teeth above Grey Hollow Watch. Breath. Small and ragged, coming from under a collapsed strut where the scout craft had folded itself into the rock 3 days back. My orders were simple and had been simple for 11 years. Anything alien that crawls out of a downed ship gets put down before it can signal, before it can run, before it can grow into something would have to fight properly. Colonel Reyes had written those orders herself. In the same hand she used to write condolence letters, and she meant every word of both. I had my sidearm out before I'd finished the thought. Then I saw him. Small. Ice blue skin going grey with cold, a child's frame curled around a piece of wreckage like it was the last warm thing in the world, which for 3 days it probably had been. His eyes opened when my shadow crossed him, silver grey, glassy with exhaustion. No fear in them yet because he hadn't decided yet whether I was rescue or the thing that finally finished it. I'd shot 2 of his kind in the war. Grown ones, armed, screaming words I never learned. This wasn't that. This was a child a stiff wind could break. I holstered the gun and got him out from under the strut with my coat already off, already around him, before my training caught up and told me what a mistake that was. His name, when I finally got it out of him 3 days later in broken trade pidgin, was Corin. He didn't know the word for orphan in any language we shared, but he knew the shape of the thing, pointed it at the wreck, at the sky, at himself, and went quiet in a way that told me everything the word would have. I told the garrison I'd found nothing alive. I told myself it wasn't a lie so much as a delay, the kind of delay a man tells himself right up until it isn't one anymore. I kept him in the equipment shed behind my quarters for 6 days. Fed him ration paste he hated and water he didn't, and on the second night, when he flinched at a slammed door like it was an execution, I understood that wherever he'd come from, gentleness was not a thing he'd been taught to expect. By the 4th night, he was teaching me his counting words in exchange for mine, holding up small ice blue fingers, getting genuinely irritated when I held up the wrong number back. I'd been a ranger 11 years. Hunted 6 scout wrecks like this one to their wreckage and their crews to whatever they had coming. I had told myself, every one of those 11 years, that the war had a shape and the shape required men willing to finish things others couldn't stomach. I had believed that. I still believed parts of it. None of those parts survived a 6-year-old falling asleep against my arm because I was, for reasons I couldn't have explained to Reyes or to myself, the safest thing he'd found since the crash. The garrison found out on the 7th day, the way these things always come apart, not through some grand betrayal, just a supply runner walking into the shed at the wrong hour, looking for a crate, finding a boy instead. Reyes had me in her office within the hour. She didn't raise her voice. That was the thing about her that scared men twice my size. She never had to. You falsified a clearance report, she said. Not a question. I found a child, I said. Not a combatant. You don't get to make that distinction. That's not what 11 years taught you to do. 11 years taught me a lot of things I'm not proud of. She looked at me the way she'd looked at men before she'd had them transferred to postings nobody came back from. He's a seed for an army we are still bleeding from, Marsh. You know the doctrine. We don't raise the next generation of the thing that's killing us. He's 7, I said. Maybe 8. He doesn't know which way is east. He cried for 2 nights because the heater clicked. That's the doctrine talking through your mouth and you know it. Sympathy is how they win the next war before it starts. She stood. Bring him to processing by morning. That's an order, not a request. I didn't sleep that night. Corin did, curled against my side in the shed, trusting the one human structure he had left in the world, not knowing that structure had 11 hours left on a clock he couldn't read. I thought about running. Thought about the canyon passes, the supply routes, 6 days on foot to the nearest neutral settlement if the weather held, which it wouldn't. I thought about every reason Reyes was right, doctrinally, strategically, on every axis the war had taught men like me to measure things by. Then I thought about the shape of his hand around 2 of my fingers, and decided the war could find another way to measure things, because I was done measuring this one. Morning came white and hard off the mountain. I didn't run. Running would have made him a fugitive instead of a child, and I'd be damned if that was the last thing I taught him about what humans do. I walk him out to the processing yard myself, my coat still around his shoulders, and Reyes was waiting with 4 men and the kind of patience that meant she expected this exact theater and had already accounted for it. You had all night, she said. I had all night, I agreed. Spent it thinking about Halvard's Pass. That stopped her, just slightly. Halvard's pass had been 7 years back, the engagement that had cost the garrison 11 men and earned Reyes her colonel's bars, and not a soul who'd been there liked hearing it spoken aloud in daylight. "What about it?" she said. "We took 2 prisoners that day. Grown soldiers, armed, who'd killed 3 of ours an hour before. You let them live. Filed it as a strategic asset. I always wondered if that was the truth or just the version that let you sleep." I looked at her steady. "I'm not asking you to lie to yourself the way I think you did then. I'm telling you what's actually standing in this yard. A boy. Not a strategic asset. Not a doctrine problem. A boy who flinches at slammed doors. Sentiment doesn't win wars, Marsh." "No," I said, "but it's the only thing I've ever seen that ends them clean instead of just quiet for a while." I held her eyes. "You can take him. I won't draw on you. I gave that up the day I put my coat around him instead of a bullet through him, and I'm not picking it back up now. But every man in this yard is going to watch you do it, and every one of them is going to remember exactly which doctrine you chose over a frightened child the next time you ask them to trust your judgment about who deserves mercy and who doesn't." The yard went very quiet. Corin's hand found mine again, small and cold, the way it had in the wreckage, except this time he wasn't looking at me like rescue or ending. He was looking at the 4 armed men like a thing he already understood too well, and at me like the only variable in the equation he hadn't yet learned to expect. Reyes looked at her men. Looked at the boy. Looked, longer than I expected, at me. "Processing requires documentation," she said finally, in the flat voice she used for orders she'd already half decided to bend. "Bring him to my office. Properly, this time. With paperwork." A pause. "Ranger's custody, pending review. That's not mercy, Marsh. That's bureaucracy. Don't mistake the two." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, and meant the opposite. The review took 11 weeks, 3 hearings, and 1 moment where Reyes asked Corin directly, through a translator pulled from 2 settlements over, whether he wanted to stay. He didn't have the words for want yet in any language we shared. He just walked across the room and stood against my leg, the way he did when the heater clicked, and that turned out to be testimony enough for everyone in that room except the doctrine itself, which had no vote. He's 11 now, by our reckoning, though we still don't know his exact age in his own people's count. He's taller than the strut he hid under. He still flinches, some nights, at sounds that mean nothing to me and everything to him, and I still get up those nights and sit by the door until it passes, because that's the job, and I took it knowing it. Reyes retired 2 years back. Sent a single line with her resignation, no signature, just, * tell the boy Halvard's pass finally taught me the right lesson. I didn't know what to write back, so I just sent him to deliver it himself, in person. In the trade pigeon he speaks better than I ever managed. Whatever he said to her, she cried, which I'm told she hadn't done since the war started. Some nights I still think about the order I was given, and the man who would have followed it without the hour's hesitation that changed everything after. I don't know what happened to that man. I think he died somewhere in a canyon with a strut and a child's breathing under it, and what walked out instead was something the war never trained for and never accounted for in any doctrine it wrote. I was sent to finish a wreck. I carried a boy out instead. 11 years from now, when someone writes the real history of how this war actually ended, I doubt my name appears in it. I don't need it to. I've got a better record of it than any file could hold. Sleeping down the hall, snoring too loud, alive because once, in a frozen canyon, I decided the doctrine could find someone else to be right.